Symbols are not merely relics of the past. They are vibrant threads in an ongoing tapestry of human consciousness. From the sacred carvings of prehistoric sanctuaries to abstract emblems of modern spiritual movements, these icons speak a language older than words. They encode layers of meaning, mythic, psychological, cosmological, whispered across millennia by shamans, sages, and seekers. Understanding these symbols is not just an academic exercise. It is an act of initiation. It draws us into a perennial conversation about the nature of reality and our place within it.
Long before it was misunderstood or feared, the pentagram was revered as a symbol of celestial harmony and sacred order. In the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, it marked the divine presence of Inanna, goddess of love, war, and renewal. She was Venus in the sky and descent into the underworld incarnate on Earth.
Over an 8-year cycle, Venus traces a perfect pentagram across the heavens. And for the Sumerians, this was no coincidence. It was a sacred rhythm, a divine choreography mirrored in myth and ritual.
Each appearance of the star marked not merely a moment in time, but a turning of the soul. Among the Pythagoreans, the pentagram carried even deeper meaning. To them, it was not merely a star, but a key to the mysteries of existence. Its proportions were rooted in harmony, in the divine ratio that ordered the cosmos. But the pentagram was not simply geometry, it was hygge, health, wholeness, and the alignment of body and spirit. Each point represented an element of the self: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, the quintessence that binds them all. In the medieval world, the symbol was revived by Hermeticists and alchemists, who inscribed it over the human form to reveal the sacredness of incarnation. The body itself, they believed, was a temple constructed on cosmic principles, and the pentagram was its blueprint. Echoes of this belief can be found far from the Hellenic world. In West Africa, for example, among the Serer people of Senegal, who traced 5 pointed stars in the earth as a spiritual compass. Known as the Unir, this symbol guided the soul toward cosmic alignment, with its apex always directed toward the North Star, the still point in a turning world. In later esoteric traditions, the pentagram became a vessel for invoking elemental energies, marking ritual space and affirming the sovereignty of the will. Inverted, it became a deliberate symbol of descent into the earth, into matter, into the shadow. Yet even this was not inherently malevolent. It was understood by the initiated as part of the sacred cycle of ascent and return. The pentagram remains, as it always has been, a mirror not of doctrine, but of inner balance, or the lack thereof. If the pentagram is a symbol of the microcosm, the hexagram belongs to the macrocosm. It is the marriage of heaven and earth, fire and water, masculine and feminine. Known to many as the Seal of Solomon, the hexagram has roots far older and wider than any single tradition.
Its 2 interlocking triangles, one ascending, one descending, have appeared in temples, manuscripts, and talismans from India to Andalusia.
To the Kabbalist, it was a sigil of divine power and equilibrium, representing the 6 directions of the world: north, south, east, west, above, and below, all held together by a hidden 7th, the center. Inscribed with the ineffable name of God, the Seal of Solomon was said to grant wisdom and dominion over spirits, not by force, but through harmony. In Sufi mysticism, the same 6-pointed star expressed the dialectic between Tanzi and Tashbih, the recognition that the divine is at once transcendent and immanent. It adorned sacred art, not to decorate, but to initiate the eye into sacred seeing. In the alchemical imagination of Renaissance Europe, the upward triangle became sulfur, the animating fire, and the downward triangle became mercury, the reflective fluid of transformation. Together they formed the sacred androgyne, the inner union from which enlightenment is born. In the East, this pattern takes form as the Sri Yantra, the mystical diagram of tantric cosmology. There too, interlocking triangles express a sacred marriage. Shiva, pure consciousness, descending into Shakti, creative force. At their intersection lies the Bindu, the point of divine emergence, where all becomes one. In every tradition where the hexagram appears, it offers the same teaching that truth arises not from division, but from the dynamic reconciliation of opposites. Carved into sarcophagi and painted on temple walls, the Eye of Horus, Wajat, watches from the oldest shadows of Egyptian thought.
It is not merely an emblem of divine protection, but a map of myth and metaphysics.
The story behind it is one of cosmic struggle. Horus, the falcon-headed god, loses his eye in battle with Set, the force of chaos. It is later restored by Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. This act is not just healing, it is the reinstatement of cosmic order, the mending of perception itself. The Egyptians believed the eye embodied a deeper law, each part of it corresponding to a specific measure, a sacred fraction. Though their system left a small portion always unaccounted for, this missing piece was not an error. It was the divine margin, the reminder that totality lies just beyond reach, and that every act of vision is also an act of limitation. Full sight belongs only to the gods. Human vision, both literal and spiritual, is always partial, always yearning toward completion. To wear the Eye of Horus, to carve it into the coffin or the temple door, was to invoke a presence that sees through illusion and guards against spiritual blindness. It was painted on the prow of boats to guide the way, etched into amulets to shield the living and the dead alike, and invoked in rituals as a symbol of regeneration. The eye does not merely look outward, it turns inward. It invites the seeker to consider not just what is seen, but how one sees. In this sense, it becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a threshold. Through it, the soul remembers that perception is sacred, and that clarity of vision, whether of self, world, or divine, is the first step toward transformation. Beneath the mossy ridges of Newgrange in Ireland, the triple spiral, known as the Triskelion, emerges from stone like a whisper from the dawn of time. Etched more than 5,000 years ago, it is not simply a symbol, but a pulse, a gesture of cosmic rhythm carved by hands that perceive reality as a spiraling dance.
Time for the Neolithic spirit was not linear. It circled, breathed, and returned.
The three spirals do not merely represent. They move, visually embodying the sacred cycles of existence. Life, death, rebirth, sun rising, shining, setting, the eternal passage of seasons and stars. In Celtic spirituality, the Triskelion reappears not as revival, but as continuity. The Druids, inheritors of an ancient esoteric memory, adorned sacred objects and places with this form. It symbolized the triple divinity, often female, maiden, mother, and crone, but also more broadly the triadic nature of all power and wisdom. In myth, the god Lugus carried the threefold form, embodying the trinity of creative expression, art, war, and poetry. These were not separate domains, but converging aspects of divine inspiration. Later Christian monks would subtly transpose the triple spiral into their own imagery, most famously in the shamrock used by St. Patrick. Yet the echo of older sanctity remained intact, its resonance too deep to be erased, its mystery too potent to be denied. Across centuries, the Triskelion held steady as a glyph of eternal motion, inner transformation, and divine unity. From the tombs of pharaohs to the treatises of alchemists, the Ouroboros slithers across the pages of esoteric history. The ancient Egyptian depiction of a serpent encircling the sun god Ra in his nightly underworld journey reveals a cosmology of cycles: birth, death, and the eternal return. This same serpent resurfaces in the Hellenistic mysteries of Alexandria, wrapping itself into a perfect circle to form a sigil of completeness. Hen to Pan, the all is one.
To the alchemist, the Ouroboros was no passive icon. It was a secret revealed in imagery. That transformation is an inward spiral, and that the path to the divine is also the path of consuming the self, purifying it, and being born anew.
In this act of self-digestion, the serpent represents the sacred paradox that destruction is the seedbed of renewal, and that wholeness arises from the integration of opposites. Across the northern skies of Norse myth, another serpent, Jörmungandr, encircles the world, biting its tail to contain the chaos beyond. Its eventual release at Ragnarok signals the great unraveling and rebirth of the cosmos. The Ouroboros, whether in Egyptian tombs, Norse sagas, or alchemical illustrations, remains the emblem of continuity through change, of unity within motion. It teaches that the end is never truly the end, but a veiled beginning coiled within. In the mystical traditions of Kabbalah, the sacred unfolds in structure, geometry as a divine articulation.
Metatron's cube, a radiant form derived from the primordial flower of life, stands as one of the most profound manifestations of this sacred geometry.
It is not a modern innovation, but an ancient key. The cube, with its nested harmonies and crystalline form, was understood to encode the elemental architecture of creation. According to the Sefer Yetzirah, the world was created through 32 mystical paths, 10 emanations, and 22 sacred letters. Metatron, the celestial scribe and guardian of divine secrets, oversees these paths. His cube then becomes more than a diagram. It is a map of the divine will, rendered visible in geometric clarity. The early mystics meditated upon these patterns, not for their aesthetic symmetry, but for their power to realign the human soul with the order of the cosmos. In the cube's folds reside the seeds of all form, and by contemplating its structure, one steps into alignment with the deeper harmonics of the spiritual world. Metatron's cube stands not as ornament, but as invocation, as a symbol of the harmony underlying all visible creation. Conceived not as a deity but as a sacred composite, Baphomet, as illustrated by Eliphas Levi, represents a convergence of esoteric traditions.
Its iconography, a hermaphroditic figure crowned with flame, seated between day and night, unites polarities into a singular spiritual entity.
With one arm raised and the other lowered, Baphomet performs the hermetic gesture, as above, so below, expressing the alchemical principle that the microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. The Templar legend of Baphomet, whether myth or misdirection, points to a deep undercurrent of suppressed wisdom, knowledge that defied orthodoxy by embracing duality, integration, and mystery. The image draws upon older archetypes, the Egyptian ram-headed Bane Dedet, associated with fertility and the transmigration of souls, and the androgynous rebus of alchemical texts, formed from the conjunctio of male and female principles. Baphomet is not a demon but a mirror, one held up to the initiate, asking them to reconcile the fragments of identity, to dissolve artificial separations, and to enter the crucible of gnosis. It is a glyph of transmutation, where light and darkness cohabit, not in conflict but in completion. Unlike the confusion of a maze, the labyrinth is a promise. There is one path, and it leads inward. From the 7-coiled patterns of Bronze Age Crete to the 11-ring stone paths of Gothic cathedrals, labyrinths have served as metaphysical tools for spiritual journeying. In the Christian tradition, they symbolize the pilgrim's walk toward the heavenly Jerusalem. But this was not unique. Labyrinths long predate Christianity. In ancient myth, the labyrinth housed not only monsters, but revelations. It was the place of confrontation, descent, and emergence.
Walking it was not merely movement. It was ritual, a choreography of the soul's unfolding.
The act of circling ever closer to the center mirrored the initiate's movement towards self-knowledge, and the return journey symbolized the reintegration of that wisdom into daily life. Such patterns also appear in the oral traditions of many indigenous cultures, where spiral and labyrinthine paths encode ancestral migrations, cosmologies, and ceremonial journeys. The labyrinth is, in essence, a universal archetype, a sacred design that speaks to the human need to seek, to enter the mystery, and to emerge transformed. Inscribed in ink on aged parchment, the Vegvisir, the Way Shower is a sigil rooted in Icelandic magical tradition. Though commonly linked to Viking lore, its true origins lie within the folk mystical practices preserved through generations of Galder and runic invocation. It was said that one who bore the Vegvisir would never lose their way, even when the path ahead was obscured by wind, fog, or fate. Its 8 limbs radiate from a central stillness, forming a mandala of direction and intention.
Each spoke, adorned with runic extensions, reflects a metaphysical orientation, points on the compass not only of geography but of the soul's many passages.
In its symmetry lies a quiet assurance, that every direction, even when unseen, leads back to the source if held with clarity and courage. Within Norse spiritual frameworks, the Vegvisir echoes the greater cosmology, the 9 realms of Yggdrasil, the wisdom of Odin, the path of initiation and return. It is both shield and map, spell and compass, a reminder that the seeker is never truly lost, for the path is always within.
What unites these symbols, star, seal, eye, and spiral, is not only their antiquity or cross-cultural resonance, but their function as bridges. They connect realms, heaven and earth, visible and invisible, body and soul. They serve as mnemonic devices, meditative aids, and maps for spiritual practice. But above all, they are living ideas, pulsing with the accumulated insight of generations. To study them is not simply to learn history. It is to enter a lineage of seekers who have, across time and space, turned to symbol not for certainty, but for direction, for a way to navigate the mystery of existence. And that perhaps is the greatest mystery of all. These ancient shapes still speak, and that we, with all our modern tools and theories, still listen.